Hey friends, we are back and I am so excited. Now, every year I get so excited when spring comes, but in Narnia, that's a whole nother level of excited because it's been winter and never Christmas there, and the White Witch has been in control. She's been ruling everything in Narnia. But now, in our last chapter, we just saw how Aslan is on the move and things started popping up out of the ground. The snow started melting, the ice started melting, birds were singing, flowers were blooming. This is an exciting time. Let's see what happens. While the dwarf and the White Witch were saying this, miles away, the beavers and the children were walking on hour after hour into what seemed like a delicious dream. So the dwarf and the White Witch, they were very mad and they were saying not nice things to Edmund. And at the same time, the beaver, they were just having a delightful time. Kind of shows you who's on the good side and who's not on the good side, right? All right. There's definitely sides. There's definitely good and evil in our world. Long ago, they had left their coats behind them, and now they had even stopped saying to one another, "Look, there's another kingfisher," or "I say, bluebills," or whatever, "What's that lovely smell?" or "Just listen to that thrush." Little bird. They walked on in silence, drinking it all in, passing through patches of warm sunlight into cool green thickets, and then out again into wild, mossy glades where tall elms raised a leafy roof far over their heads, and then into a dense mass of flowering currant and among hawthorn bushes where the sweet smell was almost overpowering. Wow, that sounds like a beautiful place, doesn't it? They had been just as surprised as Edmund when they saw that the winter was vanishing, and the whole wood passing in a few hours or so from January to May. They hadn't even known for certain, as the witch did. The witch definitely knew what was going on. They had known for certain that this was what would happen when Aslan came to Narnia. But they all knew that it was her spells which had produced the endless winter, and therefore they all knew when this magic spring began that something had gone wrong, badly wrong, for the witch's schemes. Ha ha! I love it when it goes bad for the evil one. And after the thaw had been going for some time now, they all realized that the witch would no longer be able to use her sledge. After that, they didn't hurry quite so much as they began allowing themselves some more rest and longer ones. Because remember, they were trying to beat the witch to the stone table, right? And they were like, oh, how will we ever beat her? How will we ever get there sooner? Because she's on a sledge and we're just on foot. But now, her sledge is no more. They can't go through mud. So they were able to literally smell the roses just a little bit as they walked along. They were pretty tired by now, of course, but not what I call bitterly tired, only slow and feeling very dreamy and quite inside, as one does when it is coming to the end of a very long day in the open. Susan had a slight blister on one heel, so they weren't just like, "Oh, we're so tired." They were just like, "Oh, we're tired." And a blister on the heel never feels good. They had left the course of the big river some time ago, for one had a turn a little to the right that meant a little to the south to reach the place of the stone table. Even if this had not been their way, they couldn't have kept to the river valley once the thaw began, for with all that melting snow, the river was soon in a flood. A wonderful, roaring, thundering yellow flood, and their path would have been under water. That was a lot of snow melting. And now the sun got low, and light got redder, and the shadows got longer, and the flowers began to think about closing. "Not long now," said Mr. Beaver, and began leading them uphill across a very deep, springy moss. It felt nice under their tired feet in a place where only tall trees grew very wide apart. The climb coming at the end of the long day made them all pant just a little, and just as Lucy was wondering whether she could really get up to the top of that without another long rest, suddenly they were at the top. They made it. And this is what they saw. There were green open spaces from which you could look down on the forest spreading as far as one could see in every direction, except right ahead. There, far to the east, was something twinkling and moving. "By gum," whispered Peter to Susan, "the sea!" They'd made it to the sea. In the very middle of this open hilltop was a stone table. It was a great grim slab of gray stone supported on 4 upright stones. It looked very old, and it was cut all over with strange lines and figures that might be letters of an unknown language. They gave you a curious feeling when you looked at them. The next thing they saw was a pavilion pitched on one side of the open place, a wonderful pavilion. It was, and especially now, when the light of the setting sun fell upon it, with sides which looked like yellow silk, and cords of crimson, and tent pegs of ivory, and high above it a pole and a banner which bore a red lion fluttering in the breeze which was blowing in on their faces from far off the sea. Wow. Okay. Have you guys ever seen like a little pergola or a pavilion in somebody's backyard maybe, or at the park even? Put that all aside. This was nothing like that. This pavilion was huge and had ivory posts and banners hanging on it and a big red lion on it. Very beautiful. While they were looking at this, they heard the sound of music on the right. Ooh, there was music playing. And turning in that direction, they saw what they had come to see. Aslan stood in the center of the crowd of creatures who had grouped themselves around him in the shape of a half moon. There were tree women, there were well women, dryads and naiads that had been used, as they were called in our world, who had stringed instruments. So think of them all playing their instruments. It was they who had made the music. There were 4 great centaurs. The horse part of them was like a huge English farm horse, and the man part was like a stern but beautiful giant. There was also a unicorn. Of course there was. And a bull with the head of a man, and a pelican and an eagle and a great dog. And next to Aslan stood 2 leopards, of whom one carried his crown and the other carried his standard. But as for Aslan himself, the beavers and the children didn't know what to do or say when they saw him. What would you do? What would you say if finally you'd heard everything about Aslan, and then all of a sudden now you saw this big lion? Would you run up and say hi and hug him? Or would you bow down? I don't know. What do you think you would do? All right, let's see what they do. People who had not been to Narnia sometimes think that a thing cannot be good and terrible at the same time. If the children had ever thought so, they were cured of it now. For when they tried to look at Aslan's face, they just caught a glimpse of a golden mane and the great, royal, solemn, overwhelming eyes. And then they found they couldn't look at him and went all trembly. "Go on," whispered Mr. Beaver. "No," whispered Peter, "you go first." "No, sons of Adam before animals," whispered Mr. Beaver back again. Susan whispered to Peter, "What about you?" "Ladies first." Nobody really wanted to go first. They were all just a little nervous, right? "No, you're the eldest," whispered Susan. And of course, the longer they went on doing this, the more awkward they felt. Then at last Peter realized that it was up to him. He was the oldest. He was the boy. He should go first. He drew his sword and raised it to a salute, and hastily saying to the others, "Come on, pull yourselves together," he advanced to the lion and said, "We have come, Aslan." "Welcome, Peter, son of Adam," said Aslan. "Welcome, Susan and Lucy, daughters of Eve. Welcome, he beaver and she beaver." His voice was deep. I wish I could get my voice that deep to be Aslan, but I just can't. So pretend it's the deepest voice you've ever heard. His voice was deep and rich and somehow took the fidgets out of them. They now felt glad and quiet, and it didn't seem awkward to them to be standing and saying nothing. "But where is the fourth?" asked Aslan. "He has tried to betray them and join the White Witch, O Aslan," said the beaver. And then something made Peter say, That was pretty much my fault. It was partly my fault, Aslan. I was angry with him, and I think that helped him go wrong." And Aslan, saying nothing either to excuse Peter or to blame Peter, but merely stood looking at him with great unchanging eyes. And it seemed to all that there was nothing to be said. "Please, Aslan," said Lucy, "can anything be done to save Edmund?" And we'll find out tomorrow what could be done. All right, I like it that Peter decided finally to go first and be brave, right? I also like that Peter, as much as Edmund really was to blame for what his own heart had chosen to do, Peter stood up for him as his brother and said, "You know what, that's partly my fault. I kind of made him angry, and I probably helped him when he was leaning towards going the wrong way. I helped him by being angry at him." So that was really sweet of Peter. So I hope if you're a big brother or a big sister, you kind of stick up and help out your younger brothers and sisters. All right? Hey, let's find out what happens tomorrow. I cannot wait. See you tomorrow.